Good day, friends of magic. This is your host Mike, and today we have a very special guest, the legendary Harry Potter from the world of Hogwarts and the fight against dark forces. Since he first stepped into the magical school, his life has been an epic adventure filled with battles, friendship, and self-sacrifice. Today, we will talk about his journeys, the lessons he's learned from his adventures, and how he balances the magical world with his personal life. Harry, it's a pleasure to have you on our channel, Imaginary Interviews. Let's get started. Harry, how is your day going today? We have a lot of questions from our viewers who are eager to learn more about you. Tell us, what is most important to you in your everyday life after everything you've been through? How do you find time for personal hobbies and relaxation in the magical world?
Thanks for asking. My day is busy but good. I'm grateful to connect and share experiences. After everything, what's most important to me now are simple moments with family and friends. I cherish every minute with my wife and children, whether it's helping with homework, playing Quidditch, or family dinners. These moments mean the most. I also value maintaining connections with friends who've been there through everything. Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna, their family. Making time for them is crucial. Finding time for hobbies can be challenging with my ministry role, but I've learned it's necessary. I enjoy leisurely flying, reading magical history, and gardening. These activities help me relax and gain perspective. Quiet evenings at home, playing wizard chess with the kids or reading by the fire, are simple pleasures I deeply appreciate. I emphasize to young aurors that personal time isn't a luxury but essential for balance. After facing darkness, I've learned to appreciate everyday moments of light. This keeps me grounded and gives me strength for new challenges in the magical world.
How would you describe your life after finishing Hogwarts?
My life after finishing Hogwarts was undoubtedly full of changes. After the final battle at Hogwarts, I felt immense relief but also a strong sense of loss. Losing many friends and comrades left a deep mark. In the first time after the victory over Voldemort, I tried to make sense of everything that happened, understand what to do next, and how to build my life in the new world. One of my first decisions was to continue my education. Although I formally completed my education at Hogwarts, I lacked some knowledge and skills that could help me in my future career. I returned to Hogwarts to finish the last year and pass all the necessary exams. This was important for me not only from an academic point of view but also as a way to return to normal life, reconnect with friends and teachers. After completing my education, I started working at the Ministry of Magic, in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Working at the ministry was not easy but incredibly important. We were investigating the remnants of Voldemort's supporters, as well as developing new methods of protection against dark magic. It was a period of intensive work but also a time to reflect on what we had all been through. One of the most significant changes in my life after Hogwarts was my family. Living with the understanding that I have a home and loved ones who always support me was incredibly valuable. Marrying Ginny, I found a partner who understood and accepted me as I am. We went through a lot together, and it made us only stronger. The birth of our children, James, Albus, and Lily, brought me joy and meaning that I could not have imagined before. Being a father became a new adventure for me, full of challenges and joys. Of course, my friends also played an important role in my life after Hogwarts. Ron and Hermione remained my closest friends. We continued to support each other in all aspects of life. Ron started working at the Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, a shop founded by his brother George. This allowed him to stay in the magical community and at the same time do something that brought him joy. Hermione, on the other hand, went to work at the ministry, where she quickly rose up the career ladder thanks to her intelligence and determination. Her work to improve the rights of magical creatures and fight against discrimination made our world a better place. Life at the ministry was not easy. We faced numerous problems and challenges. Despite Voldemort's defeat, the magical world remained fragile. There were those who did not want to accept change, who held on to old, discriminatory views. My job was not only to fight dark forces but also to help build a new, fairer world. I participated in the development of new laws aimed at protecting the rights of all magical creatures, and this became an important part of my mission. One of the most significant events in my career was participating in the reform of the Auror system. We developed new training programs that included not only combat skills but also psychological training, communication skills, and stress management. We understood that being an Auror is not only about fighting dark forces but also about being able to protect and support the community. In addition, I actively participated in educational programs for young wizards. We held lectures and master classes at Hogwarts, where we shared our knowledge and experience. I saw this as an opportunity to help the new generation of wizards become strong and confident. It was important not only to teach them magic but also to instill in them a sense of responsibility for the world they live in. My life after Hogwarts also included personal hobbies and time for myself. I found joy in simple things, such as spending time with my family, flying on a broomstick, and studying ancient magical texts. This helped me maintain a balance between work and personal life. Besides, I often went to Hogwarts to stay connected with Albus and Lily, who were studying there. It was important to be there for them and support them in their studies and lives. One of the most significant changes in my life occurred when I decided to write a book about my experiences and the lessons I learned from my adventures. It was a difficult but important decision. I wanted to share my story not only to talk about my achievements but also to show that everyone can become a hero if they believe in themselves and their friends. The book became an important project for me, and I hope it inspires many to their own feats. Life after Hogwarts also included numerous meetings and interactions with the magical community. I was often invited to various events and conferences, where I shared my experience and opinions. This was important for me, as I could continue to contribute to the development of our world and maintain connections with colleagues and friends. One of the most memorable events in my life after Hogwarts was the opening of a memorial in honor of all who died in the fight against Voldemort. It was a touching moment when we gathered together to honor the memory of our friends and comrades. The memorial became a symbol of our struggle and our determination to build a better world. Despite all the difficulties and challenges, I feel that my life after Hogwarts has become fully rich and meaningful. I am grateful for all the lessons I have learned from my adventures and for all the people who were with me on this path. My story continues, and I hope that I can still bring much benefit to our world. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I hope it inspires many to their own feats and helps to see that even in the darkest times there is always light and hope.
Tell us about your first love.
First love is one of those memories that always stays with you, no matter how your life turns out. For me, my first love was Cho Chang. I remember the first time I saw her in my third year at Hogwarts. She was very beautiful and popular, one of the best Quidditch players as a seeker in the Ravenclaw team. Her smile could light up any day, and I was enchanted by her from the first glance. My infatuation with Cho started quite innocently. I watched her at Quidditch practices and tried to find a way to approach her, but every time I was near, I became incredibly awkward and clumsy. I didn't know how to start a conversation and often just stayed silent when she was around. It was quite amusing and at the same time torturous for me. In my fourth year, during the Triwizard Tournament, I finally had the chance to ask her to the Yule Ball. I remember how long it took me to muster the courage to approach her and suggest going together. My friends, Ron and Hermione, supported me, but even their support couldn't ease my nervousness. When I finally approached Cho, my heart was pounding so hard that I thought it would jump out of my chest. Unfortunately, she had already agreed to go with Cedric Diggory. I was disappointed but understood her choice. After that incident, Cho and I didn't lose touch. We continued to communicate, though not as often as I would have liked. In the fifth year, we became closer through our involvement in Dumbledore's army. It was a time when we could spend more time together, and I began to feel that something more than just friendship was developing between us. Cho was a support during those difficult times when we were preparing to fight Voldemort and his supporters. Our relationship became official when we started dating at the end of the fifth year. It was a happy time despite all the challenges around. We shared our thoughts and feelings, supported each other in tough moments. I felt that I finally found someone who understood me and my fears. However, our relationship was far from perfect. The loss of Cedric during the Triwizard Tournament left a deep mark on Cho, and she often remembered him. It was not easy for both of us. We tried to support each other, but sometimes it was difficult to handle our emotions. One of the most challenging moments was when we argued about how I perceived Cho's loyalty to Cedric. Her tears and my attempts to comfort her often led to misunderstandings and tension in our relationship. Our first love with Cho taught me a lot. I learned to understand and accept someone else's pain, to support and be honest with my feelings. Although our relationship didn't last, I always cherished the memories of that time. Cho was my first love, and this experience was important for my personal growth. After we broke up, we remained friends and continued to support each other. Even though our paths eventually diverged, I am grateful for everything we went through together. Looking back, I realized that first love is not always perfect and smooth. It can be full of challenges and emotional struggles, but it is also a time of learning and personal growth. My experience with Cho taught me to be more patient and understanding, to value the moments of joy and to learn from the moments of sorrow. It was a significant chapter in my life that helped shape who I am today.
How do you think it was for your parents to hide the truth about your destiny from you? Do you think it was cruel?
That's a profound question, and one I've pondered many times over the years. My parents, Lily and James, loved me more than anything in the world. They sacrificed their lives to protect me from Voldemort, and I believe every decision they made was out of that profound love and desire to keep me safe. To understand why they didn't tell me about my destiny, we have to consider the context. When I was born, the wizarding world was in the midst of a terrible war. Voldemort was at the height of his power, and there was a prophecy predicting that a child born at the end of July would have the power to defeat him. My parents knew that Voldemort was after me because of this prophecy. They went into hiding, under the protection of the Fidelius charm, to keep me safe. Their priority was ensuring that I lived to see another day. Imagine telling a baby or even a young child that they were destined to defeat the most powerful dark wizard of all time. It's an impossible concept for a child to grasp, and it would have placed an unimaginable burden on my shoulders long before I was ready to handle it. I think my parents wanted me to have as normal a childhood as possible, given the circumstances. They wanted me to grow up without the weight of the prophecy hanging over me, at least for a little while. Of course, I can't ignore the fact that my parents didn't have much time to make these decisions. They were killed when I was just a year old. The task of raising me and eventually revealing the truth fell to others. Dumbledore, for instance, chose to leave me with the Dursleys, where he believed I would be safe from the remnants of Voldemort's followers. His decision was based on the protection provided by my mother's sacrifice, which was anchored in the blood of her sister, Petunia. It wasn't until I turned 11 and received my letter to Hogwarts that I began to learn about my parents, my heritage, and the magical world. And even then, the full truth about my destiny and the prophecy was revealed to me piece by piece. Dumbledore believed that I should learn these things gradually, as I grew older and more capable of understanding and dealing with them. When I finally learned about the prophecy in my 5th year at Hogwarts, it was a shocking revelation. But by then, I had faced enough challenges and dangers to be able to cope with it. I had the support of my friends, who stood by me through everything, and I had grown stronger and more resilient. If I had known all of this from a young age, I'm not sure how I would have handled it. The weight of that knowledge could have been crushing. In hindsight, while it might seem that keeping the truth from me was cruel, I believe it was done out of love and a desire to protect me. My parents and the others who guided me were trying to shield me from a burden that no child should have to bear. They wanted me to have a chance at a childhood, however imperfect it might have been with the Dursleys. Ultimately, I think they hoped that by the time I learned the full truth, I would be ready to face it. And in a way, they were right. By the time I understood my destiny, I had the strength, the friends, and the experiences I needed to take on Voldemort and his followers. It was their love and their sacrifices that gave me that strength. So no, I don't think it was cruel. It was a difficult, heartbreaking decision made out of profound love and concern for my well-being. In the end, I am grateful for the way things unfolded, despite the hardships. It taught me resilience, the value of friendship, and the importance of love. Those are the lessons that have defined my life and helped me become who I am today.
What are your thoughts on Slytherin now, after all these years?
My views on Slytherin have evolved over time, shaped by my experiences and interactions with individuals from that house. Initially, Slytherin represented everything I feared and disliked about Hogwarts: ambition at any cost, a disregard for rules if it suited one's goals, and a tendency to value pure blood status above all else. However, as I grew older and faced more challenges, I came to realize that Slytherin House, like any other, is not defined solely by stereotypes. There were individuals in Slytherin who defied expectations and showed bravery, loyalty, and cunning in ways that surprised me. Severus Snape, for instance, despite his complicated past and actions, ultimately sacrificed much for the greater good, protecting me and others behind the scenes. I also learned that ambition, when tempered with integrity and empathy, can be a powerful force for positive change. Many Slytherins, including my wife Ginny, showed me that ambition doesn't have to mean stepping on others to get ahead. It can mean striving to be better, to protect those you care about, and to stand up against injustice. Slytherin's reputation for producing dark wizards isn't entirely unfounded, but it's not the whole story either. Every house at Hogwarts has its strengths and weaknesses, and each student brings their own values and aspirations. Over time, I've come to appreciate that diversity and complexity are what make Hogwarts, and the wizarding world, so rich and dynamic. So, my opinion of Slytherin now is more nuanced. I understand that it's not about the house itself but about the individuals within it and the choices they make. It's about recognizing that people can surprise you, that courage and loyalty aren't exclusive to Gryffindor, and that ambition can be a force for good when guided by principles. In the end, Hogwarts taught me that true bravery is not the absence of fear but the ability to face it despite your fears. It taught me to look beyond labels and see people for who they truly are. And that's a lesson I carry with me to this day.
What are your relationships like with your friends from Hogwarts, especially with Ron and Hermione?
For me, my relationships with Ron and Hermione have always been particularly important. They're not just my friends from Hogwarts, they're like family, with whom I've shared numerous adventures and trials. Our friendship began in our early days at school when we uncovered the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets together and became part of Dumbledore's army. Together, we fought against dark forces, and each adventure strengthened our bond. Ron has always been like an older brother to me, protective and supportive in tough times. We shared not only the joys of victory but also the sorrow of losing our friends. His sense of humor and openness helped us maintain optimism even in the darkest situations. Ron was always there when I needed help or just someone who understood. With Hermione, we often argued, especially at the beginning of our friendship, but it was precisely because of her intelligence and determination that we managed to overcome many trials. Her knowledge and analytical mind often saved us from trouble and helped us solve puzzles posed by Voldemort and his followers. Overall, Ron and Hermione are more than friends to me, they're my family, and our bond forged through adversity at Hogwarts remains strong to this day.
Some say you relied too much on your friends. What can you say about that?
Relying on friends is not just about dependence, it's about trust and the strength of our bond. In a world where we faced dark forces and fought for survival, friends became an integral part of my life. Ron and Hermione aren't just my friends, they're my brothers and sisters in spirit. We've weathered countless trials together, from battling Voldemort to personal losses and disappointments. And every time I felt like hope was slipping or my strength faltered, they were there to support me. Some may see relying on friends as a weakness. I see it as a display of true strength. Our friendship is built on mutual respect, understanding, and a willingness to lay down our lives for each other.
What is your role in the Ministry of Magic today?
Well, my role at the Ministry these days is quite different from what I imagined when I was younger. I'm heading the Auror office now, which comes with its own set of challenges and responsibilities. It's a bit surreal, to be honest, considering where I started. Our main focus is on maintaining peace and security in the wizarding world, but the threats we face are constantly evolving. We're not just dealing with dark wizards anymore, we're also tackling complex issues like magical cybersecurity and interspecies diplomacy. It's a far cry from the straightforward duels of my youth. One of the most rewarding aspects of my job is mentoring the next generation of Aurors. I try to instill in them not just magical skills, but also the importance of integrity, teamwork, and critical thinking. I often find myself drawing on lessons from my own experiences, both the triumphs and the mistakes. The Ministry itself has undergone significant reforms since I first encountered it as a teenager. We've worked hard to create a more transparent and just system, though there's always room for improvement. I'm particularly proud of our efforts to combat discrimination and promote equality for all magical beings. Balancing this role with family life can be challenging. My wife and children are incredibly supportive, but I'll admit there are times when the demands of the job can be overwhelming. I'm fortunate to have a strong team around me, both at work and at home. Despite the difficulties, I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue serving and protecting our community. The world isn't divided into good people and Death Eaters, as a wise man once told me. Understanding that complexity is key to my approach in this role. Looking ahead, I hope to continue strengthening international magical cooperation and fostering a new era of understanding between different magical communities. It's ambitious, but I believe it's essential for our future. After all, if my life has taught me anything, it's that seemingly impossible things can be achieved when we work together.
What was the most difficult decision you had to make?
The most difficult decision I ever had to make was during the Battle of Hogwarts. It wasn't just about facing Voldemort or fighting Death Eaters, it was about choosing to confront the darkness within myself and the sacrifices that came with it. There was a moment when I had to decide whether to continue fighting or to give in to fear and despair. It wasn't just about my life but the lives of everyone I cared about: Ron, Hermione, Ginny, and countless others who believed in me. I had to trust in the guidance of those who came before me: Dumbledore, Sirius, even Snape, and believe that our cause was worth fighting for, even if it meant personal sacrifice. It was about realizing that sometimes, the hardest decisions are not about winning or losing but about staying true to who you are and what you believe in, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. That moment taught me that true courage isn't the absence of fear but the strength to confront it, to protect those we love, and to never give up hope, no matter how dire the circumstances.
Is there anything you regret or wish you had done differently?
Reflecting on my journey, there are indeed moments when I ponder over decisions that could have altered the course of events. One significant regret revolves around the choices made during the Triwizard Tournament. I faced tremendous challenges and the weight of responsibility at such a young age, and looking back, I wonder if I could have handled certain situations with more wisdom. There were instances where fear and uncertainty clouded my judgment, leading to unintended consequences. For instance, trusting too readily or acting impulsively without fully considering the consequences. If I could revisit those moments, I would strive to approach challenges with a clearer mind, seeking counsel from trusted mentors like Dumbledore and relying more on the support of my loyal friends. Moreover, there were personal interactions where I could have been more empathetic or understanding, especially in moments of tension or conflict within the wizarding world. These reflections remind me that growth comes from acknowledging mistakes and striving to learn from them, embracing the lessons they impart rather than dwelling solely on regrets. In essence, while I carry lessons from my past, I also recognize the importance of moving forward with courage and compassion, guided by the values that define who I am.
How do you see your future in the magical world?
My future in the magical world? That's a question I find myself pondering more often these days. It's strange, you know. For so long, I was focused on just getting through each day, each challenge. The future always seemed like a distant concept. But now, I have the luxury of actually thinking about it, planning for it. I see my future as deeply intertwined with the future of our magical community as a whole. My role at the ministry isn't just a job, it's a commitment to shaping a better world for the next generation. I want to continue working towards a society that's more just, more inclusive, and more prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. One of my main goals is to bridge the gap between different magical communities, not just within our country but internationally as well. We've made progress, but there's still so much work to be done in terms of understanding and cooperation between various magical beings and cultures. I also see education playing a big part in my future. Not just in terms of training new Aurors, but in a broader sense. I want to help create a magical education system that prepares young witches and wizards not just to cast spells, but to think critically, to question, to innovate. The challenges of the future will require new solutions, and we need to equip our youth to find them. On a personal level, I hope to find a balance between my public responsibilities and my private life. My family is incredibly important to me, and I want to be present for them, to create a home filled with love and laughter, the kind of home I dreamed of as a child. I'm also keen on exploring more of magical history and theory. There's so much we still don't understand about magic, and I find myself increasingly fascinated by these deeper questions. Who knows? Maybe in the future, I'll take a step back from active duty and delve into research or teaching. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the future rarely turns out exactly as we expect. So while I have these plans and aspirations, I'm also trying to stay open to new possibilities, new challenges. The magical world is constantly evolving, and I want to evolve with it. Ultimately, my hope for the future is to continue making a positive difference, in whatever form that takes. Whether it's through my work at the ministry, through mentoring the next generation, or through some new path I haven't even considered yet. As long as I'm contributing to a better, safer, more understanding magical world, I'll feel like I'm on the right track.
What lessons did you learn from your early encounters with Voldemort?
The lessons from those early encounters, they were profound and, in many ways, shaped who I am today. First and foremost, I learned the true power of friendship and loyalty. In those moments of facing overwhelming darkness, it was the support of my friends that gave me strength. They weren't just there for moral support, they were actively part of overcoming those challenges. It taught me that no matter how talented or destined one might be, we're stronger together. Another crucial lesson was about the nature of courage. I realized that being brave isn't about not feeling fear, it's about doing what's right despite being afraid. Those encounters were terrifying, but they taught me to push through that fear when something important is at stake. I also learned the importance of preparation and knowledge. While luck played a part, it was often the skills and information we had gathered that made the difference. It showed me that in the face of great challenges, education and training are vital. Perhaps one of the most significant lessons was about the complexity of people. I learned that the world isn't simply divided into good people and bad people. Even in those early encounters, I began to see the nuances of human nature, the way past experiences shape people's actions, for better or worse. Another key lesson was about the power of love and sacrifice. The protection I had from my mother's sacrifice was a tangible demonstration of how love can be a force more powerful than any dark magic. It taught me to value and respect the power of such deep emotions. I also learned about the dangers of seeking power for its own sake, and how it can corrupt even the most brilliant minds. It made me wary of easy solutions and helped me understand the responsibility that comes with any kind of power or influence. Lastly, those encounters taught me about resilience and perseverance. Each time, no matter how difficult or hopeless things seemed, we found a way through. It instilled in me a deep-seated belief that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope if we're willing to keep fighting for what's right. These lessons weren't easy to learn, and some came at a great cost. But they've guided me throughout my life, influencing how I approach my work, my relationships, and my understanding of the magical world. They remind me every day of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the strength we find in unity.
How do you assess Voldemort's impact on the wizarding world before his downfall?
Voldemort's impact on the wizarding world before his downfall was profound and far-reaching. It's something I've spent a lot of time reflecting on, both personally and in my role at the ministry. First and foremost, he created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion that permeated every aspect of magical society. People were afraid to trust one another, afraid to speak out, even afraid to use certain names or phrases. This fear didn't just affect daily life, it fundamentally altered how our community functioned. Families were torn apart, friendships were strained, and the very fabric of magical cooperation was stretched to its limits. Voldemort's ideology also exposed and exacerbated deep-seated prejudices within our world. His emphasis on blood purity brought long-simmering tensions to the surface, leading to increased discrimination against Muggleborns, half-bloods, and magical creatures. This didn't just affect individuals, it shaped policy and institutions in ways we're still working to undo today. On a governmental level, his influence led to corruption and manipulation within the Ministry of Magic. This erosion of trust in our institutions has had long-lasting effects. Even now, years later, we're still working to rebuild that trust and ensure transparency in magical governance. 27.2 Educationally, his reign had a significant impact. The quality and content of magical education were affected, with certain subjects being promoted or suppressed based on his ideology. This created gaps in knowledge and skills that we're still addressing in our current educational reforms. Economically, the climate of fear he created led to a downturn in magical commerce and innovation. Many businesses struggled or closed, and advancements in magical research were stifled. Perhaps most insidiously, Voldemort's actions created a generation marked by trauma. So many lost loved ones, witnessed horrific events, or were forced to make impossible choices. This collective trauma has shaped our society in ways we're still coming to terms with. However, it's important to note that his reign also sparked resistance and brought out extraordinary courage in many. The Order of the Phoenix and other resistance groups demonstrated the strength of those who stand up against tyranny. In retrospect, Voldemort's impact serves as a stark reminder of how fragile peace can be, and how vital it is to actively work against prejudice and fear. It's a lesson we must keep at the forefront as we continue to shape the future of the wizarding world.
What difficulties did you encounter in the process of rebuilding the world after Voldemort?
Rebuilding the world after Voldemort, that's been a long and complex process, with challenges we're still addressing today. The immediate aftermath was, in many ways, as difficult as the conflict itself. One of the biggest hurdles was addressing the deep-seated fear and mistrust that had permeated our society. People who had lived in constant fear for years couldn't simply switch that off overnight. We had to work hard to rebuild community bonds and restore faith in our institutions. This meant not just policy changes, but also creating spaces for dialogue and healing. Another significant challenge was dealing with the aftermath of the corrupted ministry. We had to carefully examine every department, every law, every procedure to root out the influence of Voldemort's regime. This wasn't just about removing obviously dark elements, it was about subtle biases and structural issues that had been exacerbated during his reign. It required a delicate balance of reform and stability. The justice system posed its own set of difficulties. We had to find a way to hold people accountable for their actions during the war without falling into a cycle of revenge. This meant establishing fair trials, dealing with complex cases of coercion and imperious curses, and finding ways to reintegrate those who had been misled rather than truly malicious. Economically, we faced the challenge of rebuilding a magical economy that had been severely disrupted. Many businesses had been destroyed or forced to close, and there was a general lack of confidence in financial institutions. Encouraging investment and entrepreneurship while also ensuring equitable recovery was a delicate balancing act. Education was another key area of focus. We had to redesign curricula to address gaps created during Voldemort's reign, while also incorporating lessons learned from the conflict. This included expanding education on Muggle relations, ethics of magic use, and critical thinking skills. Perhaps one of the most personally challenging aspects was dealing with the trauma and grief that affected so many. We had to find ways to honor those we'd lost while also helping people, especially the younger generation, move forward and build lives not defined by the war. International relations were also complex. We had to rebuild trust with other magical communities, some of whom had been affected by or involved in the conflict in various ways. This meant diplomatic efforts, international cooperation initiatives, and a lot of transparent communication. Lastly, we faced the ongoing challenge of remaining vigilant against any resurgence of extremist ideologies while also promoting a society of openness and trust. It's a balance we're still working on, how to maintain security without falling into paranoia or oppression. These challenges have been formidable, but they've also presented opportunities for growth and positive change. While the work of rebuilding is ongoing, I'm continually inspired by the resilience and dedication of our community in creating a better, more inclusive magical world.
What lessons did you learn from your battles with Voldemort?
The battles with Voldemort, they taught me lessons that have shaped every aspect of my life since. It's hard to distill them all, but I'll try to share some of the most important ones. First and foremost, I learned the true power of love and sacrifice. It wasn't just about my mother's protection, it was about the strength that comes from caring deeply for others and being willing to put their needs before your own. This kind of love isn't weakness, it's the most potent form of magic we have. I also learned the importance of choice. Our choices, more than our abilities or circumstances, define who we are. This was evident in how different people reacted under pressure, and in the stark contrast between those who chose to stand against evil and those who embraced or enabled it. Another crucial lesson was about the danger of fear and how it can be weaponized. Voldemort's power came as much from the fear he instilled as from his magical abilities. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to act in spite of it. The battles taught me about the complexity of people. I saw how good people could make terrible choices out of fear or misguided beliefs, and how redemption was possible even for those who seemed lost. It made me wary of seeing the world in black and white terms. I learned the value of preparation and knowledge. While raw courage and instinct played their part, it was often the skills and information we had gathered that made the difference. It showed me that in facing any challenge, education and training are vital. The importance of teamwork and trust in others was another key lesson. No matter how central my role might have been, I couldn't have succeeded without the support, skills, and sacrifices of many others. It taught me to value different perspectives and abilities. I also learned about the corrupting nature of the pursuit of power for its own sake. Seeing how the quest for power and immortality twisted Voldemort helped me understand the importance of having a moral compass and staying true to one's values. Perhaps most importantly, I learned about resilience and hope. No matter how dark things got, there was always a way forward if we were willing to keep fighting for what's right. This has stayed with me, helping me face new challenges with determination. These battles also taught me about the weight of responsibility and the importance of leadership. I learned that leading isn't about having all the answers, but about inspiring others and making tough decisions when necessary. Lastly, I learned the importance of understanding our history and learning from it. Many of the issues we faced had roots in long-standing societal problems. It showed me that to create real change, we need to address these deeper issues, not just their symptoms. These lessons weren't easy to learn, and they came at a great cost. But they've guided me in my work, my relationships, and my understanding of both the magical and non-magical worlds. They remind me every day of the ongoing responsibility we all have to stand against darkness and work towards a better world.
There's an opinion that you broke Hogwarts rules too often. How do you justify your actions?
That's a fair question, and one I've reflected on quite a bit over the years. You're right, I did break rules at Hogwarts more often than I probably should have. Looking back, I can see how it might seem reckless or disrespectful. I think it's important to consider the context of those situations. Many times, breaking rules wasn't about rebellion or disregard for authority, but about trying to do what I believed was right in extraordinary circumstances. We were often faced with situations where following the rules would have meant ignoring very real dangers or letting injustices occur. That being said, I don't want to glorify rule breaking. There were certainly times when I acted impulsively or made poor decisions. I'm not proud of every instance, and I've learned a lot about the importance of considering consequences more carefully. I think what I've come to understand is that rules are important for maintaining order and safety, but they aren't infallible. There are times when higher principles, protecting others, standing up against injustice, or preventing harm might necessitate going against established rules. The trick is in discerning when those times truly are, which admittedly, I didn't always get right as a student. It's also worth noting that many of these rule-breaking instances led to important discoveries or interventions that ultimately benefited the school and the wider wizarding world. However, I recognize that's a dangerous line of thinking. The ends don't always justify the means. As an adult, and especially in my current role, I have a much deeper appreciation for rules and regulations. I understand now that they're often in place for good reasons, even if those reasons aren't immediately apparent. I try to use my experiences to teach young Aurors about the complexity of decision-making in difficult situations. It's about finding a balance between following protocol and being able to think critically and act decisively when unusual circumstances arise. In the end, while I can explain the reasoning behind many of my actions at Hogwarts, I wouldn't say I'm trying to justify all of them. Some were necessary, some were misguided, and all were part of my learning process. What I hope is that I've learned from both the successes and mistakes of those experiences to become a more responsible and thoughtful leader now.
What do you think would have happened if you hadn't defeated Voldemort?
That's a chilling question, and one that I've admittedly pondered in darker moments. It's difficult to imagine the full extent of what might have happened, but based on what we know of Voldemort's intentions and actions, I think the consequences would have been catastrophic. First and foremost, I believe the wizarding world would have fallen into a reign of terror unlike anything we'd seen before. Voldemort's power and influence were growing exponentially. Without his defeat, I fear he would have consolidated control not just over Britain, but potentially expanded his reach globally. The Ministry of Magic, already infiltrated and corrupted, would likely have become a mere puppet government, enforcing Voldemort's will. This would have meant the implementation of severely discriminatory policies against Muggleborns, half-bloods, and any beings deemed inferior by his twisted ideology. Hogwarts and other magical schools would have been transformed into institutions of indoctrination, shaping young minds to accept and support his regime. The curriculum would have been altered to promote dark magic and pure-blood supremacy, stifling critical thinking and ethical education. The Muggle world would have been in grave danger. Voldemort's disdain for Muggles was well known, and without opposition, he might have initiated open warfare against them. This could have led to a catastrophic breach of the Statute of Secrecy, with unimaginable consequences for both magical and non-magical communities. Resistance would have been brutally suppressed. Those who opposed Voldemort would have faced persecution, imprisonment, or worse. The climate of fear would have been all-encompassing, making it nearly impossible for any organized opposition to form. On a personal level, I know that many of my friends and loved ones would have been primary targets. The thought of what might have happened to them is, well, it's not something I like to dwell on. Internationally, other magical governments might have tried to intervene, potentially leading to a global magical conflict. Alternatively, some might have chosen appeasement, allowing Voldemort's influence to spread beyond our borders. The advances we've made in magical cooperation, creature rights, and Muggle relations would have been completely undone. We would have regressed into a dark age of magical history. However, I have to believe that even in this worst-case scenario, there would still be those fighting for what's right. Resistance movements have a way of persisting even in the darkest times. The human spirit, both magical and Muggle, has an incredible capacity for resilience and hope. Ultimately, while it's important to understand the stakes we faced, I try not to get lost in these what-if scenarios. Instead, I focus on ensuring that the sacrifices made to prevent this future weren't in vain. We must remain vigilant and continue working towards a just and inclusive magical world, so we never come close to such a reality again.
What do you think would have happened if you hadn't defeated Voldemort?
That's a chilling question, and one that I've admittedly pondered in darker moments. It's difficult to imagine the full extent of what might have happened, but based on what we know of Voldemort's intentions and actions, I think the consequences would have been catastrophic. First and foremost, I believe the wizarding world would have fallen into a reign of terror unlike anything we'd seen before. Voldemort's power and influence were growing exponentially. Without his defeat, I fear he would have consolidated control not just over Britain, but potentially expanded his reach globally. The Ministry of Magic, already infiltrated and corrupted, would likely have become a mere puppet government, enforcing Voldemort's will. This would have meant the implementation of severely discriminatory policies against Muggleborns, half-bloods, and any beings deemed inferior by his twisted ideology. Hogwarts and other magical schools would have been transformed into institutions of indoctrination, shaping young minds to accept and support his regime. The curriculum would have been altered to promote dark magic and pure-blood supremacy, stifling critical thinking and ethical education. The Muggle world would have been in grave danger. Voldemort's disdain for Muggles was well known, and without opposition, he might have initiated open warfare against them. This could have led to a catastrophic breach of the Statute of Secrecy, with unimaginable consequences for both magical and non-magical communities. Resistance would have been brutally suppressed. Those who opposed Voldemort would have faced persecution, imprisonment, or worse. The climate of fear would have been all-encompassing, making it nearly impossible for any organized opposition to form. On a personal level, I know that many of my friends and loved ones would have been primary targets. The thought of what might have happened to them is, well, it's not something I like to dwell on. Internationally, other magical governments might have tried to intervene, potentially leading to a global magical conflict. Alternatively, some might have chosen appeasement, allowing Voldemort's influence to spread beyond our borders. The advances we've made in magical cooperation, creature rights, and Muggle relations would have been completely undone. We would have regressed into a dark age of magical history. However, I have to believe that even in this worst-case scenario, there would still be those fighting for what's right. Resistance movements have a way of persisting even in the darkest times. The human spirit, both magical and muggle, has an incredible capacity for resilience and hope. Ultimately, while it's important to understand the stakes we faced, I try not to get lost in these what-if scenarios. Instead, I focus on ensuring that the sacrifices made to prevent this future weren't in vain. We must remain vigilant and continue working towards a just and inclusive magical world, so we never come close to such a reality again.
Harry, if you could give our listeners one piece of top advice, what would you say?
If I could give your listeners one main piece of advice, that's a weighty question. After everything I've experienced and learned, I think the most crucial advice I can offer is this. Choose love and courage over fear and hatred, always. It might sound simple, even cliché, but I've seen firsthand how powerful this choice can be. In our darkest moments, when faced with challenges that seem insurmountable, it's the choice to act out of love for our friends, our families, our communities, even for strangers, that makes all the difference. Courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what's right even when you're terrified. It means standing up for others, speaking truth to power, and being willing to face difficult truths about yourself and the world around you. Love isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's a force that can drive us to incredible acts of bravery and selflessness. It's what binds us together and gives us strength in the face of adversity. This advice applies to everything from confronting dark wizards to dealing with everyday challenges. When you're faced with a difficult decision, ask yourself, am I acting out of love or fear? Am I choosing courage or taking the easy way out? Remember, the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. We all have light and darkness within us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. Don't underestimate the power of small acts of kindness and bravery. They can create ripples that change the world in ways you might never see. Lastly, never be afraid to ask for help or to offer it. Our strength lies in our connections to each other. No one can face life's challenges alone, nor should they have to. So, choose love. Choose courage. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because in the end, that's what makes all the difference.
Thank you, Harry, for these wise words and for sharing your experience and thoughts with us. We appreciate your openness and willingness to talk about difficult topics. It was an incredibly fascinating interview, and I am sure that our listeners also received a lot of useful information and inspiration. This concludes our release of today's Imaginary Interviews. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so that you don't miss new releases. We have many more interesting guests from the world of magic and fantasy ahead of us. Thank you for being with us, and see you soon.